So I'm back. I had posted my first impressions of the Golden Horse. This is the vegan magic. In my first video, I skated in them, and like I had mentioned, I picked the wrong size. Mainly somebody was selling it and it just happened to be the wrong size. But I also wasn't sure if it was women or men's. This ended up being a men's 9. But for the most part, size of the skates don't tend to matter to me. I can at least roll in them. I've skated in a men's 12, and it was like skating with pickup trucks on my feet. But I can still roll in a skate that is not completely the right size. Just general statement. But what I tend to look for when I was looking at this skate was the quality and how it was built. And the biggest concern that I had and a few other people had was this this pivot in this pivot cup. There's no pivot cup. This pivot setup, which is just a pin stuck in a hole. Now this is the normal truck, as Golden Horse calls it. There is a 360 truck that has a bigger pivot head that is goes into this bigger hole that's been covered right here, this bigger one. But both of them don't have pivot cups, and I'm going to explain how this is different. So this is a Moxie. This is what the pivot situation looks like. It has a rubber pivot cup where the pivot pin or pivot head, whatever you want to call that in the truck, tends to sit in. And basically how a pivot cup works is it takes the friction of that truck. So while it's rubbing around inside of the plate, it will take all that deformity. Instead of deforming the plate, it's going to deform that pivot cup. And eventually the pivot cup will wear down. Sometimes they bust. Sometimes they just get crusty and crack and fall apart. But a lot of your agility and turning ability and everything is based in that pivot. So if say when people ask why their skates aren't having as much action or reaction, and they say loosen your trucks, loosen this part right here, and then the cushions will expand a little and give a little more action in the truck. Now if you loosen it up too much, then this whole thing jiggles around, and then you'll have like no control. It'll just be completely squirrely and it will rattle and everything. So that's when people are like, well, you might need softer cushions, and then you'll get more, maneuverability. So right there is where it kind of course, pivots this entire thing. So your truck is going to have more motion and ability to move. I'm not sure if that even makes sense. My brain made more sense than when I actually said it, so I apologize. Okay, so here's what is on the Moxie plate. This is a thrust plate. It's not top of the line. It's still a plastic nylon. Plastic and nylon are the same thing. They're just made of different materials, but it's still a type of thermoplastic. Here is the pivot cup. Like I said, that's rubber. It could wear out. This one actually is fairly new, so it's not completely worn out. It's kind of flexy. We've seen these things crack right around the toe stop, mainly for roller derby players because there's so much stress going on that toe stop. So these will crack. It's not a matter of how strong it is and how flexible it is. Eventually these things can crack depending on what your weight is and how much force you're putting on the plate. So this is what the pivot head or pivot pin, whatever you want to call this part of the truck, is on the Moxie on the thrust. So hopefully it's not, yeah, okay. So you can see it's rounded here. So it can go into that hole and it could just, move around because it's nice and soft. Now here's what the Golden Horse normal, not the 360, looks like. It has a stick with a blunted end. So it's basically a cylinder. So it's just gonna sit in that plate, and there's not like, the good thing about having this rounded edge is you're going to have that ability to go around it like a ballpoint pen. It's going to just flex around. This one is a little rounded, so it's just going to kind of sit. It's just got rounded edges. It's just going to not react as quickly when you have that in your truck. So here's what the truck looks like for Golden Horse. Like I said, this is not the 360. It's a hole just a hole. So it's not going to have that flexibility of the 360, which is why Golden Horse is trying to push off this 360 idea, because you're going to have better motion because of that rounded pivot head. Now looking at like other plates, some higher end plates, the reason that this kind of bothers me is that the 360, they make it sound like it's a magical maneuverability tool, which it is, but nobody really sells a pivot head like this because it is just cheap and terrible. So they're like, we're going to upsell you on this rounded head. So this is what the 360 kind of looks like. It's similar to this is obviously the Moxie truck, the thrust plate. Their 360 has the rounded head like this. It's not adjustable. It's this is a good example of what an adjustable pivot looks like for an Avenger. Let me take this off. This has a little nut that you can loosen and tighten as you adjust the action on your trucks. This is a double action plate. As you adjust that, so like if the cushions are harder and softer, how much is it going to compress under it? You might have to adjust that pivot head just a little further out. So first of all, your maneuverability left and right, boop, boop, boop on that pivot will happen a little bit easier, a little better. And then the cushions, of course, will be possibly at different compressions. And there's a whole lot of technical babble, and I just started getting into adjusting trucks and adjusting cushions and like messing with pivot heads. So I'm not going to pretend I know everything about it. I just know the basics about it, but at least I will look into why things are the way they are. So here's another example. That's a pivot cup. These are all replaceable. They're disposable. My example I gave is that these are roller skate underwear. You have to change them every so often. If you're having a problem with maneuverability and you're going around changing your cushions, changing your adjustments, and you still feel like things are a little wonky, check out the pivot cup. Has it been broken? Has it worn out? And it won't affect the entire plate because you already paid $200 to $300 for some of these plates. Why would you want to wear them out that quickly or have that possibility that it could break? So that's why they want you to just, have this cute little, I call it the slip point, where your truck is going to just slip around in there and you do cool stuff on your skates, because that's what we're hoping you're going to do. So I'll also give them a little extra credit here, because at one point, looking at photos online of these plates, I thought possibly they only had a piece of metal screwed into the plate, but they actually have bolts. The kingpin is a bolt, so that makes me feel a little better. If you can see, that is the head of the bolt, and it is sitting in the plate. As you look at other plates, like the thrust, it has the same setup, where I can show you this guy. What they do is they stick a bolt straight through the plate and then tighten it. So ultimately, I would say this is a decent starter skate. I never said anything negative about the actual function of the skate. When I went outside and just skated the trail, it was smooth. I didn't get as much response out of it, but like I said, I think that was because I need to adjust the trucks. And possibly they were just too big. I'm not going to be like carving bowls in these things or anything. Don't take them to the skate park, by the way. But they rolled fine. I think these will be fine as an introductory skate for new skaters. I just think some of the manufacturing, the quality could be improved, but I also think that their higher end skates are better. But I haven't had personal experience with them to actually give that opinion. I'm just assuming. So as a new skater, if you're just looking for something to cruise around with, this would be fine. I personally would not pay nearly $300 for these boots, for these skates. But that's just me. I also don't tend to pay full price for things. Buy used, buy vintage, learn how to fix up certain like basic things on your skates, and you can pretty much skate anything. Just make sure they fit. That's all I have for that.